I think the biggest thing is Walmart is paying a lot of money for anti-union tactics. They have a lot of people that literally are trained to fight back any union talk in the warehouse. So yeah, we definitely made history in Canada. This is the first Walmart warehouse in Canada to organize into a union.
Welcome to Activists Make History. My name is Peggy Nash. I've been a union activist, a feminist advocate, and for nearly a decade, a member of Parliament in Canada's House of Commons. I know what it's like to start from scratch, against the odds, in building a community campaign or running for political office. Our lives are hugely affected by political decisions, but for the underrepresented in political life, Canadian politics can seem like a secret society designed to shut them out. I'm here with a special series from Perspectives, a Canadian journal of political economy and social democracy, to lift the curtain on these electoral mysteries and show the underdogs how we can do it. In Activists Make History, I talk to activists, experts, political leaders, and those like me who've been there and done that, to show you can make real progressive change in how Canadian democracy functions so that we can win a better world through elected office. This episode could not have been made possible without the generous support of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. My first guest on Activists Make History is Angela Drew Kimelman, a Unifor national representative organizing workers for better working conditions and the fight for affordability. Recently, she helped Walmart workers in a massive distribution warehouse organize a union for the first time ever in Canada. This was her first organizing campaign, and she made history. To organize Walmart workers was certainly no easy feat. Walmart, as a global corporation, is notorious for union-busting practices. To keep wages low and profits extraordinarily high, Walmart has engaged for decades in campaigns and tactics that split workers up, devour market competition for labor, and threaten layoffs and firings to prevent union organizing. That hasn't stopped Angela, who oversaw the union's certification of around 800 Walmart warehouse workers in Mississauga, Ontario. Facing challenging conditions, a lack of benefits, and poor pay that could not keep up with inflation, workers saw Walmart continue to raise prices and rake in profits. As Canadians continue to see the seller's inflation phenomenon enable corporations like Walmart to profit off the cost of living crisis, we've also seen a rise in labor organizing and action across the country. It's union leaders like Angela that have been organizing workers in this fight for affordability. Angela, welcome to Activists Make History.
Well, thank you for having me, Peggy. I'm excited to be here.
Let's begin by finding out a bit about you and just how you got involved in the labor movement as an organizer.
You know, it's actually a funny story. I never thought I would ever want to be an organizer. And to be honest, I didn't even know that it was like an actual job. I worked for 24 years at Rogers Sportsnet, and I was active in my union. I was a union steward, women's advocate, health and safety rep, and on the bargaining committee. And it was in my the last year of being at Sportsnet where I was like, you know what? I think I really want to try and get a job at the national union with Unifor. And it just so happened, I actually applied for a communications position, but it just so happened they needed someone in the organizing department that had a communications background, but also was interested in organizing. And that's how it all came about. It was a new role. We didn't know what it was going to be or how this role was going to shape up, but I absolutely love organizing. I think it is what I'm meant to do. I have found my home. I look at union organizing, and some people giggle when I say this, but it's very much like sales. Like you are selling to workers the idea of a unionized workforce and the benefits of what a union can do for you. And, I look at it that way in, just being very transparent and open and informing and educating people on what a union can do for them. And I absolutely love it.
Let's just talk about that for a bit, because I think for workers, correct me if I'm wrong, it can be difficult for them to find out what their rights actually are in the workplace. I mean, there are employment standards laws. How difficult is it for workers to find out about their rights? And if they decide they want to join a union, how difficult is that?
Obviously, the employer is not going to inform workers on their rights, right? So if they don't know that they have access to that, or they don't go and research online, they're going to have no idea about their rights. And especially when you have people coming here as new Canadians, maybe not used to the laws here in Canada, they have no idea what their rights are. So if someone is looking to, join a union, I would definitely recommend them, reach out. And then what we do as organizers is we educate. That's one of our main jobs, is literally educating the workers on their rights. And different provinces have different rules. And then obviously we have a whole different group with the federally regulated folks. Everything is online. If you just search for it under, for example, is the Ontario Labour Relations Act. So they can find all of that there as well. But if people don't know, they're not looking for it. So it's our job to educate them on their rights.
That's interesting. It seems like something so basic that practically everybody could use in their daily work lives. You'd think they teach that in high school, but clearly, I don't know, unless high school's changed since when I went,
Right.
they didn't teach that in high school. But let's talk about your recent success at Walmart. This is a giant Walmart warehouse in Mississauga. So try to paint a picture. What is it like for people that work in these warehouses?
Yeah, that is a loaded question and I just got chills. And I will probably say this anytime I'm talking about this Walmart campaign, I get chills because they literally become your family when you are working with these workers, and you just feel for them. The conditions in this Walmart warehouse in particular, absolutely atrocious. It would make you scream to hear some of the things like proper health and safety checks and regulations in the warehouse. Like we just had a story from someone at another Walmart warehouse that we're starting to organize. They had 1,500 pounds of product fall on them, and now they are off work because they are severely injured, and they're literally getting no support from Walmart. And there were no checks before that either. Like something broke in the stature that the pallet was sitting on, and there are no daily checks, there's no weekly checks for these pallets to be checked to see if they're going to break, right? So even just like people passing out from the heat, these warehouses are not air conditioned, cooling rooms being broken. So there's not even a space for these workers to go and cool down on their breaks. They're passing out on the job, or having to call in sick and, take less pay because they can't work because it's too hot for them to work. The conditions are horrible. And don't even get me started on the bullying. The bullying, yes, it comes from management, but it also comes from the other workers. So there's a lot of work that Unifor is going to have to do going forward to make sure that the health and safety regulations at that Walmart warehouse in Mississauga are taken care of. Obviously, the workers want better wages, they want better benefits, pensions, etc. But the biggest issue for these workers, and even talking to other Walmart warehouse workers across Canada, is health and safety. That is huge for them because it's not being taken care of by Walmart. They need the union to support them and back them up when it comes to health and safety.
It sounds like there are serious issues at least in this warehouse and probably in many others. So why has it been difficult to organize workers in these giant warehouses? Because as I understand it, this is the first Walmart that's been organized, and it's really a breakthrough in the sector.
Yeah, we definitely made history in Canada. This is the first Walmart in Canada to organize into a union, and it's the first Walmart warehouse to organize into a union as well. I think the biggest thing is Walmart is paying a lot of money for anti-union tactics, right? They have a lot of people that literally are trained to fight back any union talk in the warehouse. So, for example, we have another campaign beginning in Cornwall with 2 Walmart warehouses that'll be kicking off very soon. And they obviously know about it. The news actually picked up on it. There was a news article written on it before we had even gone out there and had meetings with these employees. So they knew we were coming. And since the certification in Mississauga, a couple weeks ago, they have issued millions of dollars in raises, $2 an hour raise for every Walmart warehouse worker across Canada, not including the group that just unionized, but that doesn't mean they're not going to get it. They can bargain for that. They also today just announced that their eyeglass coverage is doubled. So they now get $350 a year or every 2 years for eyeglasses, which they only had $150 previously. Oh, and they just made last week, when we were in Cornwall to discuss and have meetings with these workers, they announced that all part-time employees, if they wanted to, were going to be made full-time. They are trying everything in their power to fight off any union talk. And one of our big topics that we bring up with these workers is you're getting all of this right now because the union buzz is here. And if the union buzz goes away, so will this stuff that you've just received. Because Walmart, like I said, is very anti-union in the States and here in Canada. So they know they have the power right now, and they're afraid to lose that power to the workers.
It is about a power struggle.
Yeah.
And I mean, the workers, once organized, of course, regardless of what Walmart gives them, can always bargain more.
Yeah.
So it's not a floor, or pardon me, it is a floor. It's not a ceiling for negotiations. But let's back up just a bit and drill into the specifics of the Walmart campaign. How did it start? How did it get going? And what made it a success?
Yeah, I mean, it starts out one person. Marty is his name. His name is Marty. We love Marty. He called Unifor. It was one person. It took one person to get this started. And we just started doing in-person meetings. We did our first leaflet at the beginning of December 2023. And that just got the ball rolling. At the beginning, you're just trying to collect support, right? So you want to kind of gauge the support. And we had folks going to the Warehouse Workers Unite.ca website and put their information in just so that we could see what the support was like. You know, it's one thing for 10, 15 people to come to a meeting and say, yes, we want a union. But when you have a workforce of almost 900 people, 15 people aren't going to determine how many people support the union. So we gauge the support. I like to describe campaigns as hot or cold. That campaign was very hot, very fast. So we released cards December 15th of 2023, and the campaign just rolled from there. We definitely had a lot of cards right at the beginning because, you know, the excitement is still there. But what really turned this campaign around was in April of 2024. My partner on the campaign and I, we just sat down and were like, we're at like 30% cards and you need 40 in order to apply to the labor board. And we said, what are we going to do? Like, we're going out every week, we're leafleting, we're doing these in-person and Zoom meetings. We need to shake this up. Like, something needs to change, or, you know, this isn't going to happen. So we sat down with about 40 workers at an in-person meeting. And it just so happens that was the largest meeting we ever had of people combined in one room. And we said to them, we're like, we're putting this back into your hands. We're here to support you, but ultimately a campaign is won with a strong inside committee. And Team Red was formed from that day inside the Walmart warehouse. And if it wasn't for Team Red, we wouldn't have crossed the finish line. What they did was wear red Unifor t-shirts, red Unifor hats, Unifor pins in the workplace. We educated them on their rights. They educated management on their rights, and they were allowed to do that. We did get pushback on the first day. One of the employees was told to take off his Unifor shirt, and he just said, it's my right. You can't tell me to do that. If you have an issue, you can go talk to management. And actually, management told that team leader to just leave that employee alone. And we never got any more pushback after that. But what Team Red did was show the workers that they had no fear, a lot of fear in that warehouse. This showed no fear. And I actually went away for 2 weeks to go help with the Amazon campaign in Vancouver right after that meeting that we had. And when I came back, I have never seen a larger pile of physical cards signed during that entire campaign than over that 2-week period. And that's all because of Team Red, because they showed no fear, and they showed that as a group, if we do this as a group, solidarity matters, right? And it just skyrocketed from there, and the rest is history, literally.
What a great story. What a great story. And it must have been still a bit frightening for people to put those shirts on and march into that giant workplace that took guts, that took courage to stand
100%.
up to the employer. But when people are armed with their rights and they're doing it together, that must have made a big difference.
100%. And I mean, I forgot to mention as well, they would come out literally at the end of their shift and like run across the parking lot to come and help us hand out leaflets. And it's one thing for us as Unifor reps to hand out a leaflet to someone, and they were, I will say this, they were all really positive coming out of that warehouse. So we did have a really good feeling about it. But when they would get a leaflet from their own coworker, their faces just lit up, right? They're handing out these leaflets right after their shift in front of management, in front of security, and showing no fear. And I've never seen more car honking, more fist bumps, more waving out the windows than when those workers came out and actually handed their coworkers the leaflet. Like, it was huge. The Team Red, they did this. It's all on them.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah, for
Would you
sure.
say that the biggest weapon, if you will, that management has is the use of fear and the threat of job loss?
100%. And Walmart is showing it now with our Cornwall campaign. They are just spreading so many lies to just try to get in and put that seed of doubt and fear into the workers' minds. Because again, I mean, I wasn't even that educated on my rights until I came here, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. Workers don't know unless they're told about their rights, and the employer is not going to tell them because it takes away their power.
Yeah, it's interesting too how empowering it can be to wear a union symbol or a button. I remember in my own workplace as a young worker, we had a campaign and we wore buttons, and the employer freaked out, but we all had them, and the union had told us we had the right to wear them. And boy, did that upset them. It was actually very empowering, and we were headed on strike, so it helped us, muster our courage.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest messages that I would always tell the workers in meetings or one-on-one would be, if you can wear a Toronto Blue Jays hat or a Montreal Canadiens sweater in the workplace, you can wear a Unifor hat and a Unifor t-shirt in the workplace. Unless you have a uniform policy in your contract, they literally can't tell you to stop doing that. So we just went with that, and it worked.
Great advice. So you talked about Cornwall, you talked about another drive at an Amazon. So I take it Unifor is setting its sights on other warehouses. How likely are we to see some other successful drives?
We have been working with a group at 2 different Amazon warehouses in British Columbia, and they've been working on that, I believe, for about over a year now. And that's what started our warehouseworkersunite.ca website, actually, was the Amazon drives. And they currently are in hearings this week, actually, because Unifor did file an unfair labor practice against Amazon for, I believe, elevating their employee list. So they have a lot of questions about that. So they're in hearings this week. They may get an automatic cert out of it. So we'll
Can you
hear.
just explain what that means, an automatic cert?
Yeah. So it just means that they did get a vote. They did let the Amazon workers vote there, but the box was sealed. So we don't know the results, and we may never know the results. If the BC Labor Board sees that Amazon did produce an unfair labor practice, then the automatic certification would be issued. And what that means is the entire warehouse would be automatically certified as a union. There would be no reading of the votes. There would be no vote. Doesn't matter about cards being signed. So it would be an automatic certification.
That's a nice kind of a short circuit of the process.
Yeah.
Obviously, the employer made a mistake.
Obviously, you want to get those votes counted and win it in a landslide, but sometimes you have to call the employer out on their mistakes. And in this case, that looks like what is happening. But here in Ontario, we do have a lot of interest at other Walmart warehouses as well, including the 2 that I spoke about in Cornwall, one of which is so huge. I can't even explain how large this warehouse is. It's so huge. They actually supply the entire eastern part of Canada and Quebec. It's about 1,500 workers in total. So we've started that campaign going, and fingers crossed we release cards and it takes off as well.
Is the climate changing in terms of organizing? I mean, we saw the climate change in terms of collective bargaining, the metro. strike, the education workers taking on the provincial government. We saw the successes in auto bargaining. Is this helping with organizing? Are people paying more attention to unions and saying maybe that's what we need in this workplace?
100%. I think it's all of that, all of those great examples that you just gave, Metro, auto bargaining, all the things, Walmart, history making, right? So just having that in the media the day after we got the positive vote at Walmart, other Walmarts across Canada were reaching out. And I don't just mean warehouses, I mean stores, because this was nationwide, right? This news. So I also think that workers are fed up. They're fed up with being treated like less than they are. They're not being paid fairly. Like the health and safety, like I mentioned earlier, is absolutely atrocious. And they're starting to stand up for themselves, and they know their worth.
These workers probably would have worked right through the pandemic as well, right?
Yes, they did. I'll speak on the Mississauga folks in particular. They actually got a $2 an hour raise during COVID because they were required to work. And then once COVID sort of disappeared, they took that $2 back from the workers. And that was one of the main reasons why they first contacted Unifor to fight for that money back again.
I remember from the Metro workers, that was a big issue in their bargaining as well, was that $2.
Yep.
So what happens now with these workers? Because they have a union, but now they have to go to the bargaining table, I guess. So tell us a bit about that.
So currently the Mississauga folks are nominating their bargaining committee. And then once they have that in place, they are going to get together with their new national rep and their new local, which is Local 252 out of Mississauga, and they'll begin that bargaining process. So when we apply to the Labor Board, all of their working conditions, including wages, benefits, all freeze. So it's under the freeze provision here in Ontario. Walmart can't make any changes to their working conditions until they agree to a new bargaining agreement. So basically they will be bargaining from what they have now, and hopefully, they can fight for even more. Obviously, with Walmart giving, the $2 an hour raise to other warehouses and this new change to their benefits in regards to glasses, the part-time people being offered full-time jobs, this is all really good to go into bargaining with and say, like, look, we want this $2 an hour raise the same as everyone else and more. We're just, as organizers, we're just like, Walmart, keep giving these people more things because it's just going to be more fuel for us to bargain for more. So, and Walmart's just proving like they have the money to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have the money. So put your money where your mouth is, basically.
Interesting. So we'll have to keep our eye on negotiations there and,
for sure.
And look for progress, look for a positive outcome. I want to go back to the organizing, and I want you just to think about somebody who might be hearing this podcast, who's in a warehouse or any other workplace. What would your advice be for someone who might be thinking about exploring union representation?
I think the first thing would be obviously go to our Unifor website and start that process. If you're getting feedback from your employer, that's only one-sided. You want to make sure that you're making educated decisions. It's the same with voting in a political campaign. You want to make sure you're getting both sides. And I think one of the most interesting things that came out of our meetings with workers last week in Cornwall with the Walmart workers there, we had this worker come in and he wasn't going to give us his information, his name, nothing. He literally wanted to come and hear what we had to say. He was very much, I believe, against unionization. But one of the comments he made before he left, he said, I really thank you guys for being so transparent. And like he thought it was going to come in and be super biased towards unionization, basically like the way Walmart is trying to sell the Walmart life, right? He thought we would come in and be like, union, union, union. But we're just coming in and giving literally the law. And we're being very transparent. And that feedback from him really stuck to me because that's really key. As national reps with Unifor, we're just being transparent and educating those workers. But as a worker looking to unionize, it's super important to make sure you're getting all of the proper information so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to join a union. And everybody has the right to vote yes or no. But the biggest advice would be to research and get that education.
It's interesting you equate workplace democracy and the freedom to vote for union representation representation with the freedom to vote in a democratic society, to vote in an election, because I think often there are stereotypes about unions and that they are not democratic. So I think your point about transparency and ensuring that people understand what their choices are, it plays against some of those negative stereotypes. And I wish we had more that offered opposition to those stereotypes throughout our mainstream media.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll never forget that gentleman. He left the room very different than when he came in the room. He was excited to hear that, we weren't just going to be cheering for unions. Like we just wanted to give them the facts.
Well, it seems like an exciting time. I've heard your union president, Lana Payne, say we're in a moment.
Yes.
So I hope that moment means more workers have the democratic right to representation in their workplace. Angela, where can listeners find you and your work?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram, Angela Drew Kimelman. You can just, put that into Instagram and follow me along. You're gonna see some union stuff, but you're also gonna see some girly like fashion and makeup and hair and skincare and stuff too. It's kind of a good, yeah, it's all good. It's all a good mix. But I also host our Unifor podcast, and it's called The Journey, the Unifor Organizing Podcast, and you can find that on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Play Music.
Angela, thank you for joining me on Activists Make History.
Thank you for having me.
That was Angela Drew Kimelman, National Representative for Unifor and organizer of the first union certification in a Walmart warehouse in Canada. Activists Make History is a special podcast series from Perspectives, a Canadian journal of political economy and social democracy, a publication and production of the Broadbent Institute. This show could not have been made possible without the generous contribution of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. If you'd like to hear more from Activists Make History, share and subscribe to Perspectives Journal on all major podcast platforms, as well as Press Progress's Sources podcast that digs deeper into the news stories you won't find in the major papers. The Perspectives Journal podcast and Sources are proud members of the Harbinger Media Network, Canada's progressive podcast community. Once again, I'm Peggy Nash, your host for Activists Make History and proud member of the Broadbent Institute's Board of Directors. You can read my latest book, Women Winning Office, an activist guide to getting elected, from Between the Lines Books.